So I own a lot of copies of Star Wars. Last time I looked, I had bought Star Wars over 20 times. That's not including bootlegs that I've been able to download over the years. I'm just a huge Star Wars fan, and I thought it might be kind of fun to take today and talk a little bit about what it's like collecting Star Wars home media. It's kind of a broad topic. There's a lot of stuff to collect, both pre-special edition and post-special edition. Every version of Star Wars is just a little bit different, and so I thought it would be interesting to go over them with you today, share my history with Star Wars on home video, and finish things up by talking about my favorite ways to watch Star Wars. So my love of Star Wars started with this VHS right here. This is the 1990 release of Star Wars on VHS. You can tell because it has the CBS Fox logo, whereas the future release of this set, which has similar artwork, very similar layout, has a Fox video on the side. And I remember we were at Toys R Us. There was a big display for Star Wars. I think it was my mom's suggestion that we pick it up. So I would have been literally 5 years old at the time. The thing about Star Wars is it hooks you while you're young. What can I say? I know that she thought that this was the first time I was actually seeing Star Wars, but technically it wasn't. My aunt and uncle had actually shown this to me at some point prior. I'm not sure exactly when. I'm pretty sure it was like a recorded VHS. And I had not told my mom I had seen it because I wasn't supposed to watch any movies without getting her permission first, and I hadn't gotten her permission. And so I was sitting on this amazing experience that I had had. You know, when you're barely 5 years old, every time you watch a movie, it seems like you'll never see that movie again because there's so many movies. How would you ever even begin to find it again? Now, we got this movie home, and I watched this over and over. Like, this VHS edition of this movie is ingrained in my memory. I think we watched it every day for like a month until it was eventually taken away from me. My parents were just so sick of watching Star Wars. And it wasn't until I was about 10 years old that we actually got the entire trilogy on VHS. I remember seeing The Empire Strikes Back somewhere on TV and not entirely understanding what I was watching. But I saw that maybe once, maybe twice if it had, we had rented it or something. I don't remember specifically, but I do very specifically remember seeing at least some of it on TV. And then I don't think I saw Return of the Jedi until we actually got the box set in 1995. The box set we got in 1995 was the famous Faces box set, which represented the last time, supposedly, that George Lucas was going to release the original Star Wars trilogy. This set is derived from the Laserdisc remaster from, I believe, 1993 or so. Just ported onto VHS, so it's basically, the best sound quality, THX digital mastering, etc., etc. And this set is infamous because it is considered the last release of Star Wars. Own Star Wars one last time is what it said on the box art. We got this set at Econo Foods, of all places. They had a display back when grocery stores carried home video releases, which is kind of funny to think about now. But once we had this set, this was the version of Star Wars that I was really familiar with. And these are the editions that I really picture when I'm thinking about just the Star Wars trilogy. The great thing about growing up with Star Wars in the 90s is that it was a fully formed series, so it had a beginning, middle, and end. It was a complete story, there was nothing else there, and you could just dig into the lore. The expanded universe was starting, and there was just a lot of fun Star Wars content out there without being muddled by the prequels and the controversies and things that came later. Now, of course, that brings us to the big elephant in the room, which is Star Wars, the Special Edition. Now, obviously, this is more or less the modern version of Star Wars that you go out and buy on home video today. This version has been changed multiple times. That it's not the same as the DVD release. The DVD release is not the same as the Blu-ray release, and the Blu-ray release is not the same as the 4K release. But this is basically what you're gonna get. If you buy a more modern version that doesn't say special edition on it, it's this version of the film with either enhanced existing effects or different color timing or audio mixes or what have you. Now, despite all the vitriol that this version of the film brings me nowadays, I do have fond memories of when this movie was coming out. Because the fact of the matter is, I had always experienced Star Wars on VHS. And so, like many people my age, the special edition was my first Star Wars experience in the theater, which was really special. And all the little changes and differences were fun to go in and spot. Like, it was just a fun experience to see new Star Wars content. It didn't really matter what it was or what the quality of it was, because it was something new and I was just excited to see something different. Now, this particular VHS is actually a late era pickup for me. I didn't actually get the special editions until after the prequels were already coming out. These were released in another box set, which would have been the last time I bought a Star Wars new release VHS, and the first time I got the special edition on home video. And by this time, it no longer said special edition, it was just called Star Wars. And it hadn't fully processed for me that these earlier versions of Star Wars were not going to be available again. I remember the big exciting thing about that VHS set to me was the fact that it was a widescreen version, and I had never really seen the movies in widescreen except in the theater. Now, for a lot of people, The Matrix was the reason you went out and bought a DVD player. For me, I was a little young. I didn't have a lot of purchasing power. But when Star Wars Episode 1 was released on DVD, I absolutely had to have it. I was mesmerized by the idea that it had all these special features, 6 hours worth of bonus material, if I remember correctly, to go through and watch. Even if you hate this movie, this is a great DVD set and is honestly a large part of the reason I'm a huge physical media fan today, because I have always been a special features junkie. Now, of course, Star Wars coming to DVD hadn't stopped me from getting the VHS, because originally George Lucas said he wasn't going to put it on DVD until much later. But this finally did come along. We got Episode 2 on DVD, and then the original trilogy came out on DVD in, I believe, 2004, and that was the next time I bought Star Wars. Now, you'll notice this is the gold box, which means it's the full screen edition. I actually originally had the silver box edition, which was the widescreen. It is one of the few versions of Star Wars that I've bought and gotten rid of. I will explain the reasons why later on, but for some godforsaken reason, I thought, you never know, I might want to watch these movies in full screen just to relive that element of my childhood, and DVD is probably the best way to go about that since the Blu-rays are all widescreen. So this opens up, and of course the black and gold spines that all the DVDs had. This is probably the most cohesive set that's been put out of all 6 movies, short of the most recent Blu-ray releases put out by Disney, if you want to buy them individually. This has a great bonus material disc, and to my knowledge, this is not available on Blu-ray, although maybe it's in the Skywalker Saga, I'm not sure. But regardless, a lot of great special features on here, so if you see this disc available, definitely pick it up. Ultimately, as excited as I was to get these movies on DVD, this is when I kind of woke up to the fact that things were not looking up for Star Wars on home video. George Lucas went through, did another round of changes. Most egregiously, he inserted Hayden Christensen into the end of Return of the Jedi, which for me, as someone who is really not too thrilled with the prequels at that point, was totally sacrilegious, because it meant I could no longer just enjoy these movies on their own. I now was forced to accept the prequels, which at that time I was really not having. I have since kind of come to terms with my relationship with the prequels, but it took a long time, and it was a long time after I bought this box set. But it was ultimately this set that really made me interested in finding out, how can I go back and watch the original films from my childhood the way I want to enjoy them. Now, as I said before, I had sold my silver box edition of the DVD set. It's one of the only versions of Star Wars I've ever sold. As you can tell, I'm a Star Wars pack rat. And the reason is I knew I would never go back to it again, and it was because in 2005 or so, maybe 2006, Star Wars was re-released yet again in a series of limited editions. They were released individually, all three of the original three films with a bonus disc. And the bonus disc had the original unaltered versions of Star Wars that you could kick back and enjoy. Now, there was a major caveat to this release. The editions in here on the bonus disc, as you can see here, are Laserdisc transfers, which means they're letterboxed. They're non-anamorphic letterboxed. So if you go to watch this on a widescreen TV, the picture is pillar boxed and letterboxed. So you can zoom it in, but the picture quality is basically horrendous. So even this set was disappointing, but I was at least happy to have it, and I knew I was never going to need to go back to this set because everything in this set is included on the primary disc. It's actually exactly the same disc as what came out in 2004. So that's what prompted me to get rid of that silver version. Lucasfilm had broken their promise to never re-release it, but it was pretty bittersweet at that point because it was a really crummy version. But at least they had put it out and made it available. Now, for those of you guys who have stuck through to this video, you guys are the true believers. I really appreciate you sticking it out. There's one more major release I want to talk about before we get into sort of the aftermarket hunt for Star Wars films, which has been a passion for me ever since basically this DVD set came out. I've had a tremendous amount of fun going through finding previous releases of Star Wars films, and I'm going to give you guys a list of sort of what my favorite versions of Star Wars are based on all the different versions that I've picked up in my quest to find the perfect way to watch Star Wars in 2021. The only other release I want to just give a quick call out to before we get into that list is Star Wars The Complete Saga. This is the first time Star Wars came out on Blu-ray, came out in 2011, and it's one of the only editions of Star Wars that I haven't bought kind of day and date. It actually took me probably 2 years, maybe more, to buy this version of Star Wars. Probably it couldn't have been more than 2 years because this was repackaged with Darth Vader on the cover around the time that The Force Awakens was coming out, so it was still this original slipcase edition. And I just knew I was going to be disappointed by this release, so I didn't buy it right away. I was like, I'll just suffer through my crappy Laserdisc transfer on DVD that came in the 2006 release before digging into this one. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, though, and I picked it up, and I have no qualms about saying this is every bit as disappointing as I thought it was going to be. First of all, from a box art standpoint, like, I'm not in love with this box art, but also once you open it up, the contents of it are also, like, there's just not consistency in the art on the inside. The only consistency it really has is that it's frankly ugly. So you've got these kind of crayon drawings for each of the films. And then when you get into the special features, you get a lot cooler art. I'll give it that. But, you know, it has no continuity with the art that came before it. So it's this very weird sort of half-baked Blu-ray set, in my opinion. Now, that could be forgiven if the actual DVDs themselves had something nice to offer. They don't. This Blu-ray set is just the ugliest way you can possibly watch Star Wars. So, like, in terms of the original Star Wars, they really pumped up the magenta in the colors for this to try and make the movie look, you know, modern yet again, just like he did in the 90s with this release, the late 90s with the special edition, and in 2004 and 2006, I mean, just like constantly changing it, right? But this is the one where he literally broke the film for me because it was no longer at a point where I could just close my eyes when the special edition stuff happened. It now permeated every frame of film because you have this magenta colored movie where it's so bad the laser blasts are like hot pink and it just doesn't look like Star Wars anymore. when we talk about my favorite ways to watch Star Wars, you're going to find that there's a grindhouse quality to the original Star Wars because it was done in the 70s on the cheap on a particular type of celluloid. The effects are composited in a particular way that just makes the movie look like the most advanced grindhouse film that you could ever see. It's a marvel of its time, but it is of its time. This no longer has a sense of time to it. It looks timeless, but in the worst way possible. It takes all the personality out of it. By the way, you probably noticed there's no actual discs in here, and the reason for that is because I found this packaging so atrocious. I actually made custom packaging for it that I downloaded online. I can't remember what forum it was on, but someone came out with a bunch of unique artwork for this set so you could put your discs in a set that you could actually be proud of. So I'll quick show those off here just for fun. But basically, it utilizes the Drew Struzan artwork with kind of a modified Star Wars logo. And then it's got all the relevant information on the back because it's tailored to be for the Blu-ray set. So there is Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, A New Hope, which I really like this Drew Struzan cover for A New Hope. It's too bad they've kind of ruined it with this like awful floating heads Photoshop kind of a vibe because the original poster is actually really cool. The Empire Strikes Back. And you'll notice these are color-coded, by the way. So the prequels are red, and then the original trilogy is blue. And there's Return of the Jedi. And then last but not least, you need a 3-disc keep case for this to work, as you can see here. But he also has a supplemental material Drew Struzan cover, which is really actually super cool. And then it's got all the features listed on there, which is helpful. By the way, awful special features compilation. Like, of all the things that could be put on a special features disc for Star Wars, this has precisely Jack in it. It's got some deleted scenes, which is nice, but it's missing a lot of great special features, missing virtually everything from the prequel DVDs, like super incomplete set, and on top of it, really hard to navigate. The way the menus are set up in these are atrocious. Anyway, and then last up here, I'll just show you how these all look. With the spines and everything, it looks super cool in my opinion. I actually really like the presentation of this. Although this is largely an irrelevant set now because this has been released in 4K with much better transfers. Okay, so as I said, with the exception of the most recent 4K release, which we're going to actually talk about in my favorite ways to watch Star Wars, these are all of the sort of new release versions of Star Wars that I bought when they were relevant. So we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different times that I bought Star Wars before The Force Awakens came out. From 2005 onward, I was hunting for different ways to watch Star Wars, looking to the fan community for solutions. I'm going to give you guys basically 5 great ways to watch Star Wars. It's going to be a mixture of bootlegs, but also a couple of actual real Star Wars releases. And then also share a couple thoughts on editions of Star Wars that I think are overrated and probably worth avoiding.